reminds me of
Go ahead.
Gilmore Girls. That is the most frustrating thing in that series is how long it takes for them to actually get together.
It's the whole will they, won't they. So what makes a series keep going is frustrating in real life. Hey everybody, welcome back to Weather for Days. I'm Jason. This is Rachel. You know us hopefully a little bit better. We're glad you're here tonight. We're just here having conversations together. We just like talking to each other, and we thought we'd bring you in on it. This is Rachel. She's my sweetie. So what's going on? How you doing?
I'm good. I just got back from a Bible study, women's Bible study.
Okay.
Yeah. So I've had a fun evening. My girls having some coffee.
Do tell. What was it about? What was the study?
It is, yeah. Mm-hmm. It is called How Much More? Lisa Harper. I've got it right here, which is actually kind of cool. Discovering God's extravagant love in unexpected places. And yeah, Lisa Harper is fabulous. She is from Tennessee, just southern and fun. She loves to tell stories and just is hilarious. So this is
And the southern aspect of it comes across in her diction.
Yeah.
So I could tell even if I wasn't,
just in the stories, and she's really super fun to listen to. And there's video to go along with it. So
there you go. I was wondering how you She was there? No, okay. It's fine.
No, this is one of those that you've got the Bible study book that you do during the week, and then you've got the videos that we watch
accompanying video. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, so it's really fun. We've been really enjoying this. We're on week 3 of it so far, and oh yeah, I love getting to do my weekly Bible study with my girls. It's just really life-giving. That's the one thing that I always can count on during the week. Actually being able to get out of the house and talk to other adults. And
yeah.
I mean, I have you and I have my adult child, but that's not quite the same as being able to go out and
the same.
Yeah. Actually being able to have that connect with other ladies is really, it's nice. But that was my fun thing of the week. You got to stay here and watch Ethan, which is always super fun.
So, question about the Bible study: How is it structured? Does the way that the book works? Does it prompt for really good discussions? Like it kind of pulls it out of you, or does it kind of freak form and kind of goes, "Hey, talk about it," and throws the ball to you? Does it kind of prompt you a little bit?
Oh yeah, it has discussion questions for us to watch or to go through after the video each week. It is a little bit unusual in that I don't find that the daily reading that we do is super connected. Like a lot of times when you have a video and the Bible study bit, they kind of really overlap.
Yeah.
And this one, it's like you really could do them separately. You could do just the Bible or like the book portion of it.
Yeah.
Completely separate, and you could do the videos completely separate. But both of them together, I mean, they walk hand in hand. They just aren't necessarily overlapping.
It's a parallel
right
kind of thing.
You don't have to have both together, but both together does enhance the whole. So it's kind of interesting.
So it kind of makes it where you don't know what the person in the video, well, Lisa Harper is going to say in the video, but even if you read the book, you're like, I wonder what she's going to say, because it's going to be like the parallel. So
you kind of get the theme of that she's going to talk about for the week, but you definitely don't get the same material from the book and the video, at least from what I've seen so far. So, though I have to say, I haven't been extremely good about making sure I get through every bit of the book before I get to the movie. So the movie No.
The accompanying video. Right.
The video that goes along with
Yeah.
it. Anyway.
So you want to know what happened to me last week?
What?
Can't go into too much detail because, it's proprietary stuff. It's people that, that gets involved with. But we've had people that have been at the university for, like a decade and a half. And they don't delete any mail. Yeah, let's just say that. And I'm having to archive it by hand, and it's as tedious as it sounds. There's no real way to make it easier. And then my systems admin came last minute and goes, "Hey, let's do this. I won't bore you with the nerdy details, but he goes, let's do this different thing. That way you don't have to be logged on to those other people's computers." And I'm like, and then you can do it behind the scenes and work out a way to speed it up. And I was like, oh, but still, it's going to be an interesting week. But I'm not going back till Tuesday. So your stuff is probably more interesting, to be honest.
Honestly, with Ethan, it tends to be kind of the same schedule throughout the day, every day. So I don't juggle as many new things, but I don't know that I would call it necessarily not boring. It is structured and it is the same, but I like that. I think that that would probably get boring for you. But for me, I really like structure and I like repetition, and I'm fine with the same thing day after day. The thing that actually makes my days interesting and unique is what I add into it, what I bring into it, not like the outside things that affect me, but what new book am I going to read today?
Well, you could say the same thing about, like something I'm looking at or something I'm watching or reading. One thing you said earlier is an interesting. I like segues.
Okay.
So here's a segue for you. You talked about you can read the book in your Bible study and not know what the video is going to be about. So speaking of that, Rachel has not told me prior to us recording right now what we're going to be talking about tonight. My brain hasn't had a chance to react, to think about, and so I'm on a tightrope. I'm on a wire right now, and so I'm just kind of whoa, what's going to happen? So I have no idea. So shoot, what
Okay.
would keep me in suspense?
Oh, well, you're doing a really good job of keeping yourself in suspense so
You're
far.
like, I'll tell you later. Was it how to keep a dummy in suspense? I'll tell you later. Is that that's the old joke? Yeah.
Okay. Well, I kind of thought this would be an interesting one, especially considering that this week is Valentine's week. I know we're a couple of weeks recording ahead of time, so y'all will get this well after Valentine's. But for us,
right,
Valentine's Day was Friday. So the topic
for me it was Tuesday
that I thought that would be interesting to discuss this week is love. Specifically, how do people fall in love? It's one of those really, I actually find it interesting reading through books, and especially because, a lot of fiction books are romances, or they're based around some kind of a love story or a meet cute, maybe it's just finding friends or whatever, but a lot of books are based around romance, about the boy meets the girl, they fall in love, all of these things. So how do people actually fall in love?
You mean like in real life?
In
or
real life,
fictionally?
and how is the way that it's portrayed in fiction realistic or not to real life? That's another question.
Okay.
Because you want your fiction to kind of parallel your reality, right? Because if we're looking at fiction as setting the normal for how we function in our everyday lives, right? Then does reading books, does watching movies set people up to succeed or to fail in life from the way that romance and love and falling in love is presented in most books and movies?
I can also one not I don't know if corollary is a really good word to use, but an addendum to that is something that I actually read a book about last year or a year before. And it was talking about romance in the age of social media
Mm.
and dating apps and things like that, and comparing it with the way that people met that have these long-term relationships. I mean, people have been married for 50 years. You ask them how they met, and it's very strange to modern ears, but wonder if you might want to know just a little snippet of something that I got from the book.
Yeah.
And it actually does relate to us, and we'll tell you why. There's another suspense. I'm not telling you now. We're going to tell you later about how we met.
Should I
You-
spoil it? No, go ahead. We're
No,
going to keep y'all in suspense. I'm totally on board with this.
yes.
Okay.
See that little space right there, that little time? Those little spaces are going to be introduced every so often, and we're just going to just sit here and just smile at you and keep you in suspense. No, I'm counting. No more. No,
Please don't.
no more
Okay,
torture.
so-
You don't torture your audience. So
You were going to give a snippet.
you want to do it at the end or now? Okay. So the snippet it's from a book called, I think it's called Modern Romance. I think it's what it's called. It's by a comedian who also does, like most young people, I guess nowadays, meets a lot of people, or female through dating apps. But he found that they were, sometimes you would be on a date with somebody, and they would be like, "Oh, well, I'm having a good time," and they're checking their phone because they got another in the hopper. They got somebody else. Just, if this one doesn't work out, I can just bail right away and go to the next one. And that mindset was so strange to him, but it was kind of the norm. Kind of okay, but he was curious as to, for people that had met back in the day, even in the 30s and 40s and 50s and stuff like that, and why had they stayed together for so long and their relationship is so rock solid, or appears to be. They would invariably meet. You ask them, why'd you meet? We were in the same apartment building.
Mm-hmm.
We go to work. How do you go to work? Well, you come downstairs in the morning and you go down to the bus stop, and you're sitting at the bus stop side by side, and you're like, well, how are you doing? And it's just that those conversations that creep up. So sometimes, because you live in the same apartment building or the same, there's your classes sometimes even meet. So you're probably going to be middle to lower class or whatever. You're not going to be, you're not going to have somebody who is a high society and then middle class. Your class is going to be the same, probably because of the apartment you're able to afford. So you probably have a similar amount of money coming in. Similar, probably maybe upbringing or background.
We think about people maybe didn't move quite as much, so that they would know.
Oh yeah, that's another thing too.
They would know the same things. They maybe had the same school education. Maybe went to the same church.
Yes, and sometimes people that it used to be like, let's say, take a big city like New York. Well, certain parts of New York in certain times it's not that they would be segregated, but people cultures would just sort of coalesce around each other. So you'd have oh, this is the Polish side of town or the Italian side of town. And those things just kind of, I don't know how natural it was that happened, but that happened. You were talking about your area. Well, if you have an app, you can tell the app, I'm going to look in 20 mile, 50 mile, 100-mile radius. Oh, sure, it's a little bit of a drive out to go meet this girl, but she seems pretty cool, right? But back then, your radius was your neighborhood or this side of town. When you have this radius that you can look at on these dating apps, you've got, oh, look, my they say there's plenty of fish in the sea. Well, instead of looking in a pond for some fish, you're looking in an ocean of possibilities.
Mm-hmm.
So guess what? What if this one's, you're thinking, so you're automatically thinking this person's not quite right. Or you're looking for the little flaws, the things that you would work through and kind of try to understand.
So you're saying it makes people more willing to kind of jump from person to person.
Like I said, remember I said before,
there's more
to bail on the date.
For choice.
Exactly. That's a point that he made. And it made it where, because you had so many choices, you were apt to, was it don't sweat the small stuff? Mm-hmm. You would sweat the small stuff. Little things like, oh, well, it's not something big like, oh, this person votes a certain way, or this person, has this sort of religion or that sort of religion, or, values and things like that. No, it may be something like she eats salad and I eat steak. Now we're done. It's like little things like that, like just, or I like this sport and she likes this other sport. I'm done. Things that are just kind of like, is that really that big? And if you were just meeting somebody, you're like, oh well, I met this. Let's say it's 1940. I met this girl named Susie. She goes to. I met her on the bus. It was great. We're kind of hitting it off. She's a little bit different than me, but and you make it work, or you kind of just go, oh, it's just it's the varieties. Variety is the spice of life. You just kind of go, oh, and those little things are not that big. The big things are the big things, like values. What if you're meeting somebody that's young enough to, the draft could be instituted and they could go off to war? Well, I mean, what would she think about? Those are bigger issues of it. People are on people's minds. What kind of job am I going to do? What are your prospects? Those big things, those are serious long-term relationship questions. People had those, and nowadays it's
what
kind of like,
I feel too, though,
I
that
talk
there
too much, but go
used
ahead.
to be more just the country wasn't so divided. People weren't so divided. There was more of a standard of just beliefs. There was a lot more sameness. There was an expectation of this person is going to act and behave in this way, the way that everybody does. So there wasn't as much chance that if you met somebody and you committed to them, that they were going to turn out to just have some crazy different beliefs than you had, right?
Let's say you're Italian. Your Italian grandma is going to say, "Oh, who did you meet, sweetheart? Is she a good little Italian girl? Is she a Catholic girl? Where she go to church? Stuff like that." And of course,
I don't know. Maybe we're romanticizing it a little bit,
a little
though.
bit,
I
but
feel like
some of the aspects
because you
come through.
still have human beings that are prone to sin and to just stupidity, and you had that back then the same as you have now. I feel like, though, there was a lot more of just suffer in silence too, though, because there was a lot of people that just they got married to someone, they realized that they weren't compatible, that they didn't believe the same things, but they just lived with it, and they'd never said anything about it because the expectation was you got married, you're stuck with that person, and you pretend to the entire world that you're happy.
Wow.
That
Is
very
that
much
a benefit
was.
of the modern world? Is that we're more? It's a two-edged sword. I mean, we're more vocal about
Mhm.
what we want and what we're looking for. That can be a good thing. Of course, I'm struck with the whole thing about I'm so glad I'm not looking anymore. I'm so glad I found you. I say that all the time. It's like, I'm so glad I found you when I did.
Same.
What happened was, I'll see these videos where men will lament that a lady's list of stuff she doesn't like is this long, and they're really little things that you're like, that's
Mhm.
really, you
Their
know,
ick list, right?
oh yeah, I want a guy who will express his feelings, but if he cries, I'm done. And you're like, okay, so you want it the exact. All I'm saying is, thank God for thank God for God, because I honestly think that there's an understanding that you have that we're all flawed people, but you're not just reveling in the flaws. You're trying to do better and be better and let Christ show through you. I don't know. Does that
Well,
make sense?
let's come back. We've kind of
Yeah.
been
Sorry,
we've gone all around the topic because we've talked about,
but that was fun, man.
yeah, but we've talked about
Yeah, bring it
how
home.
I'm trying.
I'm sorry. I'm encouraging you. Like, yeah, go girl.
You're interrupting.
I am interrupting. I'm sorry. I tend to do that. I'm sorry.
Okay. So we've talked about how the people in the old days used to. So, okay. But how do we actually meet and fall in love? What is the process of falling in love? And I mean, it's pretty simple most of the time, right? You find somebody, there's a spark, you're attracted to them, you like, there's the visual, then you hopefully fall in love with them as a person. You think that they're, that they're interesting. You find things in common, right? But what takes you beyond that? A lot of times it's just in a book, you go, oh, well, I know that this person is going to end up with this person because the summary has already told me who the two main characters are. There's some books where it's a surprise, where you've got a couple of different options and you've got, the person going through there and you don't realize immediately which one they're actually going to fall in love with.
Right. Like
And
like
those are fun.
the triangles or the rectangles or whatever you want to call them, that where they introduce multiple possibilities.
Or where the author just doesn't give everything away at the very beginning and you're introduced to multiple different people that could be a love interest that, the main character is finding attractive. They're finding that their personalities jive, that they have things in common. I really do think those are fun when you don't know who it actually is until you're like at least a third away or halfway through the book. And then, because you're then in the process of trying to figure out who actually has the the characteristics, who is the one that actually goes with this person. It's that reminds me of
Go ahead.
Gilmore Girls.
Okay.
I'm doing Gilmore Girls with my two
With your
girls,
Weatherford
with my
girls, yeah.
girls. Yeah. And we're going along and, it's the whole Luke and Lorelai. But you don't start out with Luke and Lorelai actually being together. You have Lorelai with Max for like an entire season, and then she's with Christopher, and then she just goes from one person to another, and she's dating multiple people, and the pain and agony of seeing how many times it almost happens where Luke and Lorelai start dating, and then something crazy intervenes, and they end up not dating, and it just gets dragged out so incredibly long. That is the most frustrating thing in that series is
Well, here's
how long it takes for them to actually get together.
that's how they get multiple seasons out of it. I mean,
Right.
it's the whole will they, won't they? I mean, Friends, the show Friends ran on that for a long time. Well, is it going to be Ross and Rachel? They're going to get together, and honestly, I didn't care after a while. The thing the thing about those shows is, if this was a real story, how could Luke sit there, behind, he runs like a diner or something. How could he look over there at her and maybe have that thought in his head that she could be a romantic partner, and to see her with this guy and then with this guy? To be honest, I don't know if I could hold out and just, when she gets tired of these other guys, then she'll settle for me. I'll be third choice. I would have moved on. I just would have been like, she's a great friend and she's sweet and I like a lot about her, but it's never going to happen. And she would be like,
He
feeling sad.
does.
He does
There are
what?
moments when he does move on, but then those relationships don't end. He actually has a Rachel that the first season, that it's like, Lorelai is actually thinking, oh, he actually, maybe I should date him. And then before she actually makes any encouraging moves to let him know that she's actually interested in him, his old girlfriend walks back into town and he decides that he's going to try and make it work with her.
So what makes a series keep going is frustrating in real life. If this was a real life situation,
But
it'd
I
be
think
frustrating to be around them or watch them go through all this.
we don't all go through as much frustration as they do, but a
They're
lot
written
of
that way,
times we
yeah.
do have frustrations. We have people that, not everybody marries their high school sweetheart. You have people that you honestly, you envision your life with them. You think yeah, this is the one. And then for some reason or other, it doesn't end up working out. And as Christians, we're always going, I want the one that God has for me. And we spend a lot of time, I mean, especially the generation that we were raised in, we spent a lot of time going, we really want to pray. We want to find the right person. We want to, we want to have a God centered relationship, right? And I feel like a lot of times, maybe, I don't know, maybe that is the right thing. Maybe it's not the right thing. And that's kind of the question. It's like, should we be more focusing on when we find someone and all of those boxes are checked, that we have a lot in common, we're compatible, the main big system, belief systems are all compatible. I'm using that word a lot. But if they're all compatible, then we just, rather than going, I need this magical moment where it's like, the heavens open and,
Right.
we
The
see
beam of light.
the beam of light coming down and resting on his or her head,
Yeah, that doesn't
of
happen.
actually just going, I am willing to commit to this person. I think that whether a marriage lasts or not, whether love lasts or not, it's not about the other person so much as it is about us. You have to both have the mindset of, I will commit to you, I will love you, even though I know that our life together is going to be continually finding out the flaws. But you also have to have a mindset of, neither one of us are willing to live and settle with our own flaws.
Mm.
You have to have a growth mindset to be able to have a marriage work. At least I think so. You have to both be willing to say, we're two flawed people that are going to both be continually pointing out each other's flaws this entire time. And we're going to be loving each other through the flaws, but we're also going to be working together to grow. We're neither one of us going to say, because you love me, we have to stay static.
Right.
Because if either one is like, love is conditional upon you accepting me exactly as I am and not requiring me to change and grow.
And that's a
It's not
two-way
gonna
street.
work.
And that's a two-way
Mhm.
street. I
Yeah.
don't, it's not just the wife expecting the husband to change. And then
It's that
it's
both should
two-way.
be expected to change and grow throughout the entire relationship. Is that something that I have ever seen modeled in a book? Pride and Prejudice?
Are you saying non-Christian, well, non-Christian romance writers? Because in
Yeah.
Christian romance, don't they? You've read more than I've ever.
Christian romance does a pretty good job of taking two flawed people and actually taking them on a journey. But the problem with a lot of books and a lot of romances is that they stop at the proposal or at the wedding. There's a lot of them
That's
that
when the
don't go
story
on.
really gets started. Is marriage is
Mhm.
this is the story.
Now, I will say there is an author that I read when I was young called Jeanette Oak, and she did the Love Comes Softly series, which I think they did a TV.
Miniseries.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
did a TV series based off of her
Oh yeah,
books.
sorry, not miniseries. Yeah.
Oh, and the When Calls the Heart
When Calls the Heart.
is also by Jeanette Oak.
Yeah.
So several of her series they based around them. So she did do a lot of, the people got married, and that is actually really unique about her, in that a lot of times her series started out with two people that did not have a lot of time to get to know each other. They got married because of circumstances and they had to grow together, but there was a commitment required at the beginning that was based off of, they knew enough about each other to be willing to get married, but they didn't necessarily. Yeah, I think one of the things that we tend to do modern day is we date. Kids date. We didn't date for a really long time, but kids date for a really, really long time. And there is a issue where people just don't want to commit. They're scared to commit because there's so much divorce happening. And, a lot of the kids that are in the dating age right now they've seen their parents walk through divorce and they're scarred by it. And there's a lot more caution going into it of just going, I'm not getting married unless I absolutely know for sure that this is going to work out. Which, I mean, there's wisdom in that.
I'm not a huge fan of divorce, but what I will tell you is that I have some people in my life that I know of, some that actually go to our church, but some from my previous church, that their first choice, when they tied the knot with, did not turn out to be a good person, and they didn't learn that until a little bit into it, and then they separated and divorced from that person. But the person that God had for them, He put right in their path,
Mhm.
and they're still married to this day. If you ask them, in fact, I've asked this couple, I said, would you have wished that you met him, before him? And he goes, yeah, but God had a plan. And even though we went through a scarring situation,
Mhm.
God healed those scars. So I'm not saying that, and I think that's because for some people, they may have fallen in love with who they thought this person was,
Mhm.
without waiting for God to send that right person to them. But I've seen, sometimes when someone's divorced, people of different belief systems will write them off and be like, well, that's not God's way, or da. God can bring redemption in, and
Oh,
has.
definitely.
I've seen it happen, and it really stinks that they had to go through that bad relationship for God to go, here's the one for you. And I
But
don't
the
think it's great for
thing,
everybody, but no.
one thing that I know about every couple that I've seen that has divorced and then remarried, none of them were perfect in their previous marriage. Like it never is just a one-sided thing. I shouldn't say never. It's not usually just a one-sided thing. There was issues
It's
with
not me, it's
both
them.
and
It's
a
not me,
lot,
it's them. Yeah.
right, but a lot of times it's, what did they learn because of the first marriage that made them actually capable of maintaining that second marriage, you know? And like it's tragic that they weren't able to make that first marriage work. I don't think that it's ever, it hurts to have something like a marriage that should be a forever thing.
Yeah.
That's what everybody goes into and pledges, till death do we part. You want it to last. It doesn't always. And you can learn and you can grow and you can, all the redemption of having that second marriage, that you've changed and you've learned and you've grown and you're with somebody else that is willing to walk with you again.
I think you can stay married for many, many years and not have Jesus. I'm just telling you,
Mhm.
faith has been the glue that has kept so many relationships on the right path, because you can't just have one
It's the
person walking the
perspective
path
we're
and the
coming
other.
from.
Yeah, okay, I
That,
got to admit that, but
yeah, I mean, we're going to
you're
talk about
accountable
from
to something
faith
bigger than
because
yourself.
that's
Yeah.
that's our worldview, that's our perspective.
I'm a little bit, what's the word?
And I will say,
I lean
we
toward that,
come
but
into
yeah,
this topic and we're definitely not going, oh, we have everything figured out and we're giving
right.
the answers. We're starting a conversation and we're exploring it as we go. And again, this is one of those times that we're 20 years into our marriage. We know some things. However, we don't know everything. We're still figuring out. We're still on our journey, and we would love too, if there's anything that we've said that just any of you go, oh, that's completely wrong, tell us about it. Let's
Or
keep the
resonates with you.
conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or if you think it's right, then cool.
Well,
But
so we've talked about like the real marriage and real relationships and
Mhm.
how there can be a messiness to it, but when you have that accountability to that something bigger than than either one of you, and that thing is not your marriage. It's there's an authority over. I mean, people said that the man's the head of the household. Well, the thing is that there has to be a head over all of you, and that's Christ. That's that, you know. So for me, that's the real thing. Leia does this. Leia, my daughter, she does this all the time. She will see two characters, that male and a female character, and they'll be fighting. And one of them's, the evil prince, and the other one's like some princess, and they're having like a little back and forth. And she's like, oh, enemies. No, was it enemies to lovers? And I'm like, that's in the fictional world. You're like, oh, they're going to get together because that tension. And I'm like, that doesn't happen as much. I don't see that happening. I do see that sometimes people, in marriages will butt heads a little bit, and you'll get your feelings hurt. You'll say the wrong thing, but you say, I'm sorry, I was wrong. Admit your faults and say, I'm going to, but that's different than an enemies to lovers.
don't you think,
Please
though,
tell me.
that there's so many different couples and so many different stories? You have all of these different books that have to be reflecting things that happen in real life, too, because just of the variety of people. There's so many different ways that things can happen. To say that something just doesn't happen.
Well, of course, and you're reading a book about dragons and if you're reading a book about dragons and elves and kingdoms that never
Oh, well,
existed,
dragons totally happen, right?
right? But everything, look, as soon as you start introducing elves and dwarves and dragons and magic, uh, you can have an enemies to
Then your world
lovers.
just got better.
Well, you can have an enemies to lovers, and just go, yeah. I mean, you're making making that world as you would have it. So I think aren't we, by comparing them? Am I kind of okay? Am I doing this? Am I laying my real onto the fictional and saying one is? I think our real is better than the fictional, but
Every love story is unique, which is one of the most beautiful things about this world, is that there are so many love stories. Love is the most beautiful thing in the world, I think.
it's a many splendored thing.
It is. It's inspired poetry, it's inspired songs, it's inspired paintings. Like, uh, it's the most art
It's portrayed.
inspiring thing that there
It's
is.
portrayed as something, though, that's a feeling and that's easy. And I
Hmm.
don't think that it is truly just a feeling. I believe that it is an action. And I do believe that sometimes there's a difficulty to that. But the only difficulty there is to love is when you have your flesh, as we say, your flesh, yourself, and it's clinging on. And as you let those things go, it becomes easier. But I think that because we're human, that's what makes love hard. Because our own selfishness
I think
is
it's the
there.
most worthwhile thing in the
Yes,
world, and thus it's the hardest thing in the world.
yeah, yes. The rewards are supreme, really awesome.
And well, I would say that love and parenting go hand in hand
Yes,
as, the most rewarding and the most difficult things that you will ever do. But it's the two things in life that will change you the most too, is actually being in a relationship and maintaining that relationship. The easiest thing in the world is to bounce from one person to another person to another person, because you're constantly having that start. You're presenting yourself to another person.
as soon as it gets hard, yeah.
And then as soon as it gets hard, you cut and run. That's that. But the hardest thing is to actually stay and keep pressing in and keep that relationship going, because to keep a relationship going, you have to be willing to change. You have
Yeah.
to be. You cannot. There is
You
no.
can't say I'm not budging.
And I think
You know,
that's the
you can't do that.
biggest thing that I think that the world gets wrong about love
Mm,
is they say, in order to love me, you must accept me exactly as I am. There's a stagnancy to what we
yeah.
want. We say, if you cannot accept me as I am, then you don't love me. But it's an acceptance that wants to stay, that goes, I am perfectly content with who and what I am right in this very moment, and I will not change for anyone. Whereas that's not realistic.
You know what I just thought about when you said that? On YouTube, there's the red flag guy. You know what I'm talking about? The green
Mm.
flag, red flag guy. I just saw the red flag guy run across the screen, with the red flag, because I'm not going to change for anybody. You can't accept me at my worst, da 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 best. Whatever, those little statements. I'm just like the red flag guy is just running through the scene going, "Mm." Yeah, there's so
But that's the
many.
thing.
That's a big red flag
It's
for
the
me.
tension between loving someone exactly as they are, but also loving them enough to want them to be the best that they can be.
Or what God has for them.
Right.
And
But the
you have
best that they can
joy
be
at
is
seeing
always what
them.
God wants.
Yes. And you get joy at seeing them step into all that God has for them, because guess what? You can only benefit from that.
Well, okay, here's an example. Here's an example. In this past year, I have lost over 100 pounds. And I, that was something that I was at around this weight when we got married. About 5 months after we got married, I got pregnant with our oldest. And then just with every subsequent pregnancy, which we've talked about, my pregnancies were pretty close together. We had about 6, 7 months, and then I got pregnant again. But I gained weight after every single pregnancy. I didn't gain weight during the pregnancies because I was sick during my pregnancies.
Right,
But
right.
after I had the babies, then I just gained weight, and did not have any idea what was happening, why I was gaining weight, wasn't able to lose weight, and just after every one, just gained like 25, 30 pounds. And you absolutely loved me through all of that. And then it took me years after that to actually figure out what I needed to be eating to actually lose weight and to actually change things. And I mean, there's a lot of things. There's always weight loss and weight gain is complicated, and it's very individual. And I, you know, after having walked through that myself and feeling that discouragement of going, I don't feel healthy. I don't like the way that I look, and yet feeling like there was nothing that I could do to change it, that my circumstances were all kind of conspiring against me. I had so much. I don't want to go into all of the excuses that I gave myself for
Well,
many years,
stress maybe could
but
could be one thing,
stress,
because
and then just
the challenge
having
of having
special needs
special needs kids.
child,
There you go.
yeah,
Yeah.
and then a child that never slept, that affects your mental state and your physical state. Just there's so much that went into it, but through all of that, every time that I went, I don't like myself the way that I am, your response was always, I like you exactly the way you are, but I also want you to be happy with yourself. You were supportive of me whichever way that I went. You were understanding, you weren't judgmental, and yet you encouraged me in anything that I did want to try to change. You encouraged me, you cheered me on. When we actually found something that worked, you were my biggest cheerleader. And yet, I know that there was never a point in any of that I did not feel like you were attracted to me and that you loved me and that you were my person. You were supportive of me. And that's, that how do you do that? What kind of, like, I've always been so amazed at how much love you showed to me during all of that. The times when I couldn't look at myself and love myself, you looked at me and loved me through that all. And that has always been just really incredible to me, that you could both love me exactly as I am and yet encourage and support me to change and to be the best that I could be. Just the balance of that, that really is one of those things that in most of life you've got kind of this tension between, two things that don't always seem like they'll work together, and yet somehow they do. You can, wibble bobble waffle too far on one side and too far on the other side, but you always, are able to come back and find that. I guess that's the straight and narrow that Christians talk about, right?
Right.
That's out of context, completely out of context for that, because that's talking about the path to salvation, and we're talking about something completely different here. But
That could be
I
a whole
think it
nother
applies. Yeah.
episode. Yeah. You want to reward them? We have a reward for you for sticking through the whole conversation. And it's just been so easy to just listen and talk, because it's effortless. This time of our day and just talking with my wife is effortless. But now your suspense is at an end. How me and Rachel met was on it's kind of like a dating website, or really it's really supposed to be for people to meet the one that they want to get married to. And it had all these compatibility things that, that they match you up. It wasn't a hookup website at all. It was kind of you're trying to find the person
This,
that could be right for you in marriage.
at the time, I mean, 21 years ago, it was the Christian dating website, or it wasn't even a dating, it was a compatibility, meet
Yeah.
the one. It was a match thing. So eHarmony.
Yeah.
We met on eHarmony.com. Was that worth the
Yeah.
wait and the build up?
And
I
and
know a
we
lot
talked
of people that
once
met on
we
eHarmony.
exchanged phone numbers. It was off to the races after that. We were just talking on the phone. I would kind of work up to having her come see me now, and I would go see her. But the thing is, to say that it just was that every part of how this worked out was just rainbows and sunshine. It wasn't. God was perfecting me and still is.
Us. God was
Okay.
perfecting
I
us.
was. I
Okay.
didn't want to say. I was. I figure that's your story. That you want to. I was owning up to my own issues. You know how it is. I think that marriage worked on me and pulled me up, encouraged me to step up and to change. And the real me, kind of the solid, really good me, stepped up, and hopefully I have to do I try to every day. I take every day. Every day is a new opportunity.
There's been a lot. You've been willing to learn and grow. You've been willing to put up with me doing my iron sharpens iron, right?
Yeah, you said something about pointing out each other's faults and stuff like that. I was like, it's
Hmm.
all in how you do it. It's
It
all in how you
is.
do it. You can really go. You can do that with the best of intentions, but to do it, not you, but I
Hmm.
mean, like in a relationship, somebody could like point them out and be very, and be very sharp about it, or you can be encouraging and you can
You
have
have
their
to be.
best,
You have to be
in
willing
mind.
to, at the same time that you're examining the other person's faults that they may be blind to, and trying to figure out how to present that in a way that is loving and is kind and is encouraging. You have to be willing to do the same thing to yourself and be willing to accept that from them, of going, I have a perspective on your behavior But I also understand that you're going to have a perspective of my behavior that I don't have, because we always see things about the other person that they don't see about themselves. But at the same time, also going, just because I see something that I think you may not know, I also don't live inside your head and I need you to explain to me.
Oh, communication.
So being
Huge.
willing to listen and to go, well, I may be completely wrong about how I'm judging you after you explain to me what's going on in your head. And then being able to actually examine when somebody comes to you and says, hey, I notice you do this, what are you thinking? Maybe, you shouldn't do that. Maybe you should try and do it this way, of actually being willing to stop and think about and receive that criticism, and not to immediately just go, I'm hurt,
Right.
but wow, we've gotten pretty off topic, haven't we?
Oh, it's all one. It's all one big thing.
I don't know if we've done a lot of marriage advice. I don't know if we exactly did how do people fall in love. Maybe we'll come back to that at another episode to talk more about that. Maybe we won't.
I only know how we did, and how we do every day. I don't think that it. I really, when I see something in fiction where I see somebody just head over heels, and they get these little these feelings and all this kind of stuff, and I'm like, yeah, wait until your foundations are tested, when you have to see those sides of yourself, and this other person see that it's their sides of their self, and you might have a come to Jesus moment, and you have to humble yourself under the hand of mighty God, and then what happens? So it's kind of like when you see two young people are like, oh, we're in love, and they're like, oh, they get the eyes of each other, and you're like, okay, that's great. And then you're like, let's see what happens. Whenever trials come, honestly, those are truly what the tests are, of that love. Is you want to see that it doesn't just look or feel a certain way, that actually there's a strength there to it. I think we have been talking about what it's to falling in love is, because it's a continual falling in love, like almost like we relationship with Jesus. You're every day you're falling, and you're falling into a in deeper relationship.
It's finding a person that you're friends with, that you enjoy being around, and that after a
Don't
while you
just
go, I
love them,
can't
like them,
imagine.
like them. You have to like them. I really
You
think
have
you
to like them,
should.
but then you have to actually have that moment of going, I can't imagine my life without them.
I don't want to.
They have added so much to my life that, yeah, I wouldn't want to do this walk without that person. I think that's the moment of actually realizing that love has happened, is that you go, you know what? They're too important to me to not be a part of my life. They're my one, they're my person.
That is such a. You were saying that. I heard you, and I also heard that's a perfect bow. A bow to put on this. That's a perfect. That's I couldn't pick a better bow to put on this episode that we've talked about tonight. And what a great episode to be in honor of the Valentine's Day that happened weeks ago to you. So happy past Valentine's Day to you. Do you want to say goodbye to everybody? And
Oh, you mean right now?
yeah,
Bye.
bye. Bye.
Thanks for watching, you guys.
We don't know you, but we love you already. Bye.